Europe. So my name is Lyubov. I'm the Compliance and Globalization Manager at Tradeshift, looking after Tradeshift invoicing and tax compliance. Tradeshift is a global cloud network, a platform for commerce between companies serving more than 1.5 million businesses, with the vision to connect every company in the world, creating economic opportunity for all. And I'm joined today by Filipa from Sovos. Sovos is our global compliance partner that provides businesses with global solutions for tax determination, invoicing, compliance, and tax reporting. We work really closely with Filipa and the Sovos team. They're our long-standing partners in this area. I'll just start sharing my slides. Thank you, Filipa. Right. So the agenda we have today, the points we want to discuss and go through with Filipa are on one hand, the digital journey of businesses over the past, say, 10 years and how this has shaped the technical and organizational reality we presently find ourselves in. Then also we'll cover the unexpected digital journey of governments. And I guess to an extent it is expected. Of course, governments also want to go digital. But I think the unexpected element of this is just the extent to which they're going into, and also the complexity this brings to businesses and the impact this has, specific challenges this brings. So in the context of just the global health crisis, Brexit, the governments going digital, I think global organizations are finding themselves driven to transform, so they can come out of the current situation same or better, using digital, being better connected, more flexible. So as a final point, we'll discuss what companies need to consider when planning their global VAT strategy. And Filipa, I know you guys have been following very closely over the years the evolution of businesses in their search for optimizing their finance and procurement operations. So what could you share with us in this aspect?
Many things. Thank you, Lyubov. I think it was very interesting to listen to Adrian's presentation as well, because I think the solutions he described and the discussions that he described that Concur is having with many businesses is similar to what both Tradeshift and Sovos has seen over the years, in that I would say that the past 20 years, businesses of various sizes, but really any business that wants to stay competitive and evolve with the times, has been looking at how do you increase the visibility into your spend? How do you increase the visibility into your procurement? How do you automate those processes so that you can use the data along these cycles? And how can you best control your money, the money going in, the money coming out? So I would say that the past 20 years has been a time where most businesses that have any kind of realistic way to survive in this world will have spent time, resources, and money digitizing these processes, digitizing both their physical supply chains as well as their financial supply chains. Getting better insights into money coming in, money going out, and doing that by procuring different kinds of solutions in different countries that they operate in, to make sure that, as we see, for example, in this slide, that both their procure-to-pay processes as well as the order-to-cash processes, whether you call them that, whether you just call them AP or AR, get more data-driven, fully automated to the extent possible, of course, and that you do both cost-cutting and sales increase. But how does this happen? So, Lyubov, if you could take us to the next slide. I would say that the technologies that we've seen pop up over the past 20 years have enabled businesses to procure solutions or build solutions that have a few qualities in common. They are more and more intelligent. They use more and more analytics, and many companies out there successfully use data mining to improve the data sets that they process. The solutions that they build or procure are secure. They're inherently borderless, because without that you don't achieve economies of scale. The data and the solutions that you build or procure need to be updated in real time. Otherwise, they're largely, I wouldn't say worthless, but have limited value, because in the app that Adrian described, used in a garden or elsewhere on the go, it doesn't have much value if you need to wait for somebody else to click update for it to work. The updates that happen, they happen in real time. They're frictionless, and they are, above all, interconnected in between countries and between different systems. So, Lubov, I would say that this is my experience looking at it non-sector specific and looking at it not country specific. These are the trends that I've seen businesses be on over the past 20 years in this space. How about you, with your expertise from this field?
Yeah, absolutely agree that businesses have been on this journey for the past 20 years. They have focused on their own automation, making their processes, as you say, frictionless, borderless, intelligent. So this is really interesting, and I can see from our interaction with our large multinational clients how they are in the search of next opportunities to utilize latest tech. Full automation and use of cloud solutions are no longer topics for discussion. Really, they are simply must-haves to ensure business continuity, to maintain competitiveness. Companies are trying to make use of economies of scale, rolling out consistent processes across their operations globally to make sure that they can take advantage of these economies of scale. We see B2B marketplaces for e-procurement being a very strong trend, and something we're working on as well here at Tradeshift. Of course, regulatory country compliance, which is also our focus today, has always been on the agenda for avoiding penalties from reputational perspective, etc. But in light of the latest changes, latest trends in government mandates, it's just becoming more and more critical for the continuity of the business altogether to stay on top of these regulatory changes. And also, remote working is obviously becoming the norm for finance teams now, and for many teams really. So having the right tools in place to allow your teams to do their jobs well, but also tools and technology that encourage and facilitate collaboration and teamwork are also seem to be key for the success going forward. So we see really this increasing need for digital, for live data, as you also said, for being connected and flexible in terms of where you buy from, who you work with, a need for a network approach where we have large multinationals, SMEs, partners, providers, all as part of a single network where they can easily connect, trade, collaborate, which is again something that is really strong focus for us here at Tradeshift to build such a network for companies to create, as our vision is, economic opportunity for all parties. Right, but we are also faced with this harsh reality out there. So this really increases the pressure for all that we talked about to be adopted and fast, for all the digitization, automation, for intelligent and frictionless solutions. But at the same time, these things that are hitting us, the health crisis, Brexit, regulatory changes globally, apart from creating opportunities, they also add additional complexities. And there are specific challenges really to businesses. Supply chains have been hit especially hard by COVID because of thin margins for error, failure to digitize the process that keeps the wheel turning. We have Brexit and the Making Tax Digital initiative in the UK that have added to the complexity, specifically for UK and EU companies. Governments going digital is another aspect that forces global companies to revisit their finance and procurement strategy and technology. These mandatory, these invoicing mandates that have originated in Latin America, which we'll talk about in a second, in the early 2000s, are now really taking over the world, and countries across EU and Asia Pacific are rolling this out as well. So companies are really forced to challenge their long-held beliefs and to rethink their strategy, their global strategy, without how to factor in all these external influences without compromising on their global strategy and their digital journey that they have already been on, and so much that they have achieved. So how to not go back really on the progress that they've made. And today we want to zoom in on that trend of governments going digital, and I've been following this really closely, but Philippa, I know you really live and breathe this every day. So if you could, as the expert, talk to us through this.
I do, yes, and I'm happy to talk about this for forever. But we're gonna do a quick version of it. So if we take a step back and think about the digital journey that businesses were on, these technology that businesses have been using to to cut costs, to streamline, to automate, to improve. That technology has always also been available to governments. Governments have been trying to do the exact same thing. However, their financial ecosystem of a straight treasury looks a little bit different. They have some constraints and some freedoms that businesses don't have. So if we look at the spend side of a government, that is today public procurement, there they have been doing exactly the same as businesses have been doing, but they've been doing it through law. So they've been saying that if you want to bill me, me being a state, public, museum, a hospital, or regional board that procures things for other entities, I, as the state, would like you to send me an invoice in structured format through this platform. If you don't do that, I won't pay you. Now, it's easy for the government to say that to all of its vendors. It's more difficult for private companies, and yet still it's managed to become norm also for private companies or in the B2B space. But it's been helped on the government side through law, and largely all over Europe, we're seeing mandatory B2G e-invoicing schemes. Why? Because it gives governments clear visibility into how much money they will need to spend shortly, and increase visibility in what kind of costs they have. So it's great for automation, and it's great for spending. So that side of the spectrum, click, it's been done. With some impact for businesses if you happen to sell to the government sector. However, on the equivalent of the order to cash side, government has some inherent constraints. Now, the money that comes in for governments is through tax. And tax, you can't really collect tax with a matching electronic structured order form. It doesn't really work that way, and you can't really get, or through an invoice, and you can't really get a structured order form for the provision of government services. Nobody's going to say, I'm planning on breaking my leg next week. I need heads up NHS. That's where you're going to need to spend money on me. There are other sectors where you can plan more. Education, infrastructure, but still that's often driven from political investment. So it's more difficult on this side. But what governments can do is to understand better how much money will be coming in. Since VAT on its own accounts for roughly a third of state revenue, collecting and controlling VAT is increasingly important, especially in crisis times such as these. So what governments have been doing little by little is to use the same technologies as businesses have been using to do this, to put in place other kinds of control mechanisms. So Lubov, if we go to the next slide, we'll see that the business case for these kinds of changes is what we call the VAT gap. So governments, knowing that about a third of what they can spend on whatever they want to spend comes from VAT, also at the same time need to fight with what's called the VAT gap. So the difference between what they in theory could be collecting and what they're actually collecting. And that gap, sometimes it's fraud, most of the time it's just pure processing and human errors. But if you add this up on a global scale, we're talking massive amounts of money that governments aren't collecting and they're simply not able to spend them as they should. So this is the business case, I would say, that triggers governments into solving that problem and tackling this just like private sector businesses do. So, and in the next slide, we'll see how they've done that. Now, when we were talking the digital journey of businesses, we were talking about the same kind of factors that have influenced the different types of solutions that businesses have procured. But there's one big difference here when it comes to the government, and that is that the solutions that they procure, or in this case, build, that means that they are inherently and exclusively local. Governments don't need to care about economies of scale across countries because their jurisdiction for tax is always local. They can only tax their economy. So whatever platforms or systems they put in place, they're designed to work for that nation or that tax jurisdiction. So what then happens if we put this as an overlay to the reality of businesses? It's simply that whatever businesses have been doing for the past 20 years, the digitization journey that they've been on, they've been procuring procure-to-pay solutions, they've been procuring order-to-cash solutions, they've been procuring expense management solutions like Concur and others, they've been procuring scanning solutions, and there are many different types of business automation processes that they could have spent money on improving. These processes are now going to be disrupted by the digitization journey that governments are on. Because governments, while I said that they have constraints, they have the freedom of saying that this now becomes law because it brings significant cost cutting and benefits for the government and for the state. So dear businesses, now it's your time to comply. So as a result, businesses now need to adapt to this new overlay and to do it quickly as change is happening. If we move on to the next slide, this now explains to you how this is happening. So the point of departure is the legal reality that we sit in the UK and many other countries in Europe, for example, what's called a post-audit system, meaning that an auditor reserves the right to come knock on your door, take a look at your processes from the moment of issuance of a document until the end of the storage period. So that means a lot of flexibility for you as a taxpayer, but a long period of time when you have some moment of uncertainty. Whereas instead, what we see growing is what we call CTC and transaction controls, a system that is inserting itself in the middle of transactions and requiring you to submit structured data through a centralized platform in real time. Without that, you won't have compliant processes. So what is the world looking like right now? What kind of developments are we going through? I mentioned that we're starting off in a post-audit world, the UK being one such example, but we're going into a different direction. But little by little, we're seeing this change. We're going from what has originated in Latin America, which is this CTC type structure that is reforming tax control as we know it, and it's spreading. By 2020, we will have seen a completely different picture. It's now come into Europe, it's spread into Asia, and by 2030, we believe that most of the world will have some kind of tax control regime that looks like this, which means that for businesses, they need to adapt and be aware that this is coming and will disrupt the digitalization journey that they've been on. So Lubov, given your experience and how you've worked with businesses, what would you say are the key learnings in terms of this move to CTC that businesses need to adapt to?
Yes, we definitely do see much more interest in this topic, in the invoicing and tax compliance topic. It's definitely forefront for a lot of our customers, also for when we speak to prospects during the sales process. It's one of the main topics really discussed really early on. So I can see how it's a real concern for companies, and it's a real need for them to have a reliable way to have early sight of these regulatory updates globally, and also to have potentially partners that can support them with operationally in these regions and markets. Each country imposes its own regulations. The pace of change is really accelerating, as you showed. It's in just 5-10 years. Many countries globally, I haven't counted them, but yeah, across the globe, it's Europe, Asia Pacific, even the Middle East, African countries are starting now to introduce this model. And every country has its own flavor. Regulations evolve continuously as governments are listening to the market, to the feedback from the market, and also looking at what other governments are doing. So there is some consistency across the countries of the way they're introducing these new models, these new continuous transaction controls. But there is also a lot of discrepancy, a lot of flavors out there. We have this graph here. It's by no means exhaustive. There are many more countries globally that have already adopted these controls. But we see on the left side the traditional paper and web forms and for tax form filling. Then we have UK with the making tax digital reform, which while it feels quite a big change here in the UK, it's also looking at what some of the other countries are doing. I would say the UK is still on the beginning of their journey, really, to the level of complexity that, for example, Chile already has, where they're so confident with the accuracy of the transactional data they receive real time from the invoices that are exchanged through the tax authority, that they already even have the opportunity to pre-fill tax returns for companies and just give them to companies for them to actually be able to just review and approve their tax returns. So while this takes some of the complexity from businesses, it creates other kind of considerations and complexities to look out for with this model. Yes, we do see a lot of the European countries as well appearing in this graph. France and Poland have recently announced that they're migrating. So as I said, just the pace is accelerating, a lot going on, and a lot of different flavors. So what do we see, I guess, as the main points for companies to take away, to keep in mind with all this government going digital trend globally? I would say, Filipa, you spoke to us about the digital journey of companies, how they have already achieved so much over the last 10 years in terms of automation being frictionless and borderless, and having intelligent solutions in place. So they need to stay on track with this going forward, to factor in these government mandates into their solutions, and make sure that they revisit their approach in different regions, and they do come up with the global VAT strategy that supports their continuous digital transformation, and really helps them stay on track stay on top of their costs and also on top of compliance. But there is the danger, because this is happening so fast, and for companies to just abandon really the progress that they've already made and to go for local point solutions and for like fragmented AP processes, AP flows that are just not scalable and reverse on their digital transformation. Yeah, so I think this is really key to revisit their digital strategy and factor in these changes and really stay on top of the announcements globally and have reliable partners that can take away this complexity and
Luke, sorry, I've got to jump in here. We've really a little bit over time now. I wondered if you wanted to make any closing remarks very quickly, or you're happy to leave it there?
Yeah, maybe just another sentence from me, and maybe another sentence from Filippo. Just another minute, then.
Yeah, just a minute, please.
Yes, okay. I think a good main point for me to make in the end is that with these CTC regimes, with these continuous transaction controls and government mandates globally, the e-invoicing and the whole AP stream is becoming very much business critical. It's not just about avoiding penalties anymore, but it's really about business continuity, maintaining business continuity. And Filipa, maybe a few final words from you as well.
Yeah, sure. And I agree with what you just said. That's critical. And I would add one more thing, and that is that if businesses aren't careful right now, then all of this money that they've invested in improving processes and digitizing their own business and journey will be undone because the overlay that governments are now imposing and rolling out worldwide will disrupt this. So the key piece of advice from my side would be to plan ahead, see these changes coming early on, and talk to your vendors so that you don't need to change processes, but that they do it for you.
Great stuff.
Yeah.